All right, guys, so let's continue Free to Choose by Milton Friedman. Free to Choose, Who Protects the Consumer? This is chapter 7. And this little subchapter is called The Market. Actually, school just started for my class. School just started for the university I go to. And so there's more people, so you might hear more background noise, cars, fast young people have like muscle cars and shit. So people talking, but it's fine. So we're on Free to Choose. This is the last little subchapter within chapter 7. Free to Choose, Who Protects the Consumer? This one's called The Market. So there's the market, and then obviously Milton Friedman has a conclusion at the end of each chapter. So we'll put them both together. So Free to Choose, Who Protects the Consumer? This little subchapter is called The Market, with the conclusion together. So the market. Protection is not of this world. There will always be shoddy products, quacks, con artists, but on the whole, market competition, when it is permitted to work, protects the consumer better than do the alternative government mechanisms that have been increasingly superimposed on the market. So market competition, when it is permitted to work, protects the consumer better than do the alternative government mechanisms, meaning regulations, government policy, just government intervention in general. So as Adam Smith said in the quotation with which we began this chapter, competition does not protect the consumer because businessmen are more soft-hearted than the bureaucrats, or because they are more altruistic or generous, or even because they are more competent, but only because it is in the self-interest of the businessman to serve the consumer. So we're saying so as Adam Smith said in the quotation with which we began this chapter, competition does not protect the consumer because businessmen are more soft-hearted than the bureaucrats, or because they are more altruistic or generous. Altruistic meaning put you before me, right? Put the collective, or even because they are more competent, but only so competition only protects the consumer because it is in the self-interest of the businessman to serve the consumer. So again, like they teach in economy, rational self-interest, right? So because the businessman wants to make money, he's going to create jobs, and he's going to do good business because he wants his business to be run well. Again, right here when he starts, there's always going to be quacks, con artists, and shoddy products, right? There's always going to be a market for cheap shit. So if one storekeeper offers you goods of lower quality or of higher price than another, you're not going to continue to patronize his store. If he buys goods to sell that don't serve your needs, you're not going to buy them. The merchants therefore search out all over the world the products that might meet your needs and might appeal to you. And they stand back of them because if they don't, they're going to go out of business. Like they stand behind their product, he's saying. When you enter a store, no one forces you to buy. You are free to do so or go elsewhere. That is the basic difference between the market and a political agency. You are free to choose. That is, there is no policeman to take the money out of your pocket to pay for something you do not want, or to make you do something you do not want to do. But the advocate of government regulation will say, suppose the FDA weren't there. What would prevent business from distributing adulterated or dangerous products? It would be a very expensive thing to do, as the examples of elixir, sulfanilamide, and thalidomide, and numerous less publicized incidents indicate. It is very poor business practice, not a way to develop a loyal and faithful clientele. So remember when people were trying to, so again, even with government intervention, there was still people using chemicals and shit. People still use chemicals today. Damn. So of course, mistakes and accidents occur, prevent them. The difference is that a private firm that makes a serious blunder may go out of business. A government agency is likely to get a bigger budget. Jesus Christ. Cases will arise where adverse effects develop that cannot have been foreseen. But government has no better means of predicting such developments than private enterprise. The only way to prevent all such developments will be to stop progress, which would also eliminate the possibility of unforeseen favorable developments. But the advocate of government regulation will say, without the Consumer Product Safety Commission, how can the consumer judge the quality of complex products? The market's answer is that he does not have to be able to judge for himself. He has other bases for choosing. One is the use of a middleman. The chief economic function of a department store, for example, is to monitor quality on our behalf. None of us is an expert on all of the items we buy, even the most trivial like shirts, ties, or shoes. If we buy an item that turns out to be defective, we are more likely to return it to the retailer from whom we bought it than to the manufacturer. The retailer is in a far better position to judge quality than we are. Sears, Roebuck, and Montgomery Ward, like department stores, are effective consumer testing and certifying agencies, as well as distributors. Drop my fucking shit right here. Another market device is the brand name. Again, yeah, you have to represent your shit. The retailer, and right here, another market device is the brand name. It is in its self-interest of General Electric or General Motors or Westinghouse or Rolls-Royce to get a reputation for producing dependable, reliable products. Reputation. This is a source of their goodwill, which may well contribute more to their value as a firm than the factories and plants they own. Still, another device is the private testing organization. Such testing laboratories are common in industry and serve an extremely important role in certifying the quality of a vast array of products. For the consumer, there are private organizations like Consumers Research, started in 1928 and still in business, reporting evaluations of a wide range of consumer products in its monthly Consumers Research magazine. And Consumers Union, founded in 1935, which publishes consumer reports. Both Consumers Research and Consumers Union have been highly successful, enough so to maintain sizable staffs of engineers and other trained testing and clerical personnel. Yet after nearly half a century, they have been able to attract at most 1 or 2% of the potential clientele. Consumers Union, the larger of the two, has about 2 million members. Their existence is a market response to consumer demand. Their small size and the failure of other such agencies to spring up demonstrates that only a small minority of consumers demand and are willing to pay for such a service. It must be that most consumers are getting the guidance they want and are willing to pay for it in some other way. What about the claim that consumers can be led by the nose by advertising? Our answer is that they can't. As numerous expensive advertising fiascos testify, one of the greatest duds of all time was the Edsel automobile, introduced by Ford Motor Company and promoted by a major advertising campaign. More basically, advertising is a cost of doing business, and the businessman wants to get the most for his money. Is it not more sensible to try to appeal to the real wants or desires of consumers than to try to manufacture artificial wants or desires? Surely it will generally be cheaper to sell them something that meets wants they already have than to create an artificial want. A favorite example has been the allegedly artificially created desire for automobile model changes. Yet Ford was unable to make a success of the Edsel despite an enormously expensive advertising campaign. There always have been cars available that did not make frequent model changes. The Superba in the United States, the passenger counterpart of the Checker cab, and many foreign cars. They were never they were never able to attract more than a small fraction of the total custom. If that was what consumers really wanted, the companies that offered that option would have prospered, and the others would have followed suit. The real objection of most critics of advertising is not that advertising manipulates tastes, but that the public at large has meretricious tastes, that is, tastes that do not agree with the critics. In any event, you cannot beat something with nothing. One must always compare alternatives, the real with the real. That's pretty profound. In any event, you cannot beat something with nothing. One must always compare alternatives, the real with the real. If business advertising is misleading, is no advertising or government control of advertising preferable? At least with private business, there is competition. One advertiser can dispute another. That is more difficult with government. Government, too, engages in advertising. It has thousands of public relations agents to present its product in the most favorable light. That advertising is often more misleading than anything put out by private enterprises. Consider only the advertising the Treasury uses to sell its savings bonds. United States savings bonds, what a great way to save, as the slogan goes on a slip produced by the U.S. Treasury Department and distributed by banks to their customers. Yet anyone who has bought government savings bonds over the past decade and more has been taken to the cleaners. The amount he received on maturity would buy less in goods and services than the amount he paid for the bond. If you guys don't know what bonds, how they work, I made a video about that. And he has had to pay taxes on the mislabeled interest. And all this because of the inflation produced by the government that sold him the bonds. Yet the Treasury continues to advertise the bonds as building personal security as a gift that keeps on growing, to quote further from the same slip. What about the danger of monopoly that led to the antitrust laws? That is a real danger. The most effective way to counter it is not through a bigger antitrust division at the Department of Justice or a larger budget for the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, but through removing existing barriers to international trade. That would permit competition from all over the world to be even more effective than it is now in undermining monopoly at home. Freddie Laker of Britain needed no help from the Department of Justice to crack the airline cartel. Japanese and German automobile manufacturers forced American manufacturers to introduce smaller cars. The great danger to the consumer is monopoly, whether private or governmental. His most effective protection is free competition at home and free trade throughout the world. The consumer is protected from being exploited by one seller by the existence of another seller from whom he can buy and who is eager to sell to him. Alternative sources of supply protect the consumer far more effectively than all the Ralph Naders of the world. Ooh, you're throwing shade at Ralph Nader. Alternative sources of supply protect the consumer far more effectively than all the Ralph Naders of the world. Hence, we live in a free market. Except, I don't think you could come to this country and not be a citizen and just set up a restaurant on the fucking curb. I don't think you should be able to do that. The reign of tears is over. So we're on the conclusion now. That was what was that called? That was called markets. That was called the market. The market. We're on conclusion. Starting with some quotes. So the reign of tears is over. The slums will be only a memory. We will turn our prisons into factories and our jails into storehouses and corn cribs. Men will walk upright now. Women will smile and the children will laugh. Hell will be forever for rent. That is how Billy Sunday, noted evangelist and leading crusader against demon rum, greeted the onset of prohibition in 1920. Enacted in a burst of moral righteousness at the end of the First World War. That episode is a stark reminder of where the present burst of moral righteousness, the present drive to protect us from ourselves, can lead. There's a lot of philosophy on this idea that we need protection from ourselves, as you know. But again, there's also an argument where if we're really free, then I could take whatever drug I want, I could live whatever lifestyle I want, as long as I'm not hurting anybody else. Like, so then I think they would have to legalize it to justify. Then why are you going to punish a drug dealer if you allow them to be able to do drugs? Which I think is better if we legalize drugs and let people do whatever the fuck they want. No, I don't know if that's better. I think it has to be either or. I think we're going to say, fuck drug dealers. And no, I need to protect you from your fucking self. Or we legalize drugs and let people do what the fuck they want as long as they're not hurting anybody. Either or. I think I don't know. I think people do need, I mean, I've been in jail. I know how, with guidance and with like a, just in general, having these guidelines you have to follow and how, I don't know. It may not be ideal, right? We live in a world where you show us lives of people living better lives than ours, which affects us, which affects our decision making and our peace of mind and feeling settled where we're at in life. I don't know. I think structure is good. I'm not sure, man. Prohibition was imposed for our own good. Alcohol is a dangerous substance. More lives are lost each year from alcohol than from all the dangerous substances the FDA controls put together. But where did prohibition lead? New prisons and jails had to be built to house the criminals spawned by converting the drinking of spirits into a crime against the state. Al Capone, Bugs Moran became notorious for their exploits, murder, extortion, hijacking, bootlegging. Who were their customers? Who bought the liquor they purveyed illegally? Respectable citizens who would never themselves have approved of or engaged in the activities that Al Capone and his fellow gangsters made infamous. They simply wanted a drink. In order to have a drink, they had to break the law. Prohibition didn't stop drinking. It did convert a lot of otherwise law-obedient citizens into lawbreakers. I don't really think about that. It did confer an aura of glamour and excitement to drinking that attracted many young persons. It did suppress many of the disciplinary forces of the market that ordinarily protect the consumer from shoddy, adulterated, and dangerous products. It did corrupt the minions of the law and create a decadent moral climate. It did not stop the consumption of alcohol. We are as yet a long way from that today with the prohibition of cyclamates, DDT, and latril. But that is the direction in which we are headed. Something of a gray market already exists in drugs that are prohibited by the FDA. Citizens already go to Canada or Mexico to buy drugs that cannot legally buy in the United States that they cannot buy, just as people did during Prohibition to get a legal drink. Many a conscientious physician feels himself in a dilemma, caught between what he regards as the welfare of his patient and strict obedience to the law. If we continue on this path, there is no doubt where it will end. If the government has the responsibility of protecting us from dangerous substances, the logic surely calls for prohibiting alcohol and tobacco. If it is appropriate for the government to protect us from using dangerous bicycles and cap guns, the logic calls for prohibiting still more dangerous activities such as hang gliding, motorcycling, and skiing. Even the people who administer the regulatory agencies are appalled at this prospect and withdraw from it. As for the rest of us, the reaction of the public to the more extreme attempts to control our behavior, to the requirement of an interlock system on automobiles or the proposed ban of saccharin, is ample evidence that we want no part of it, insofar as the government has information not generally available about the merits or demerits of the items we ingest or the activities we engage in. Let it give us the information, but let it leave us free to choose what chances we want to take with our own lives. I don't know. I think our world is way more fucked up than when this book was written. Our world is way more decadent, way more scandalous, and way more degenerate than it was when even, what was this, like 40 years ago? 50 years ago? It's way more fucked up.